Birds of Prey issue 1, Kelly Thompson writing with Leonardo Ramiro on the art. So I have been looking forward to Kelly Thompson jumping ship to DC for quite some time. I made that clear when the solicits for this came out. I was jazzed about the whole thing for this new Birds of Prey book. And this issue is very much the first issue. It's the assembling the team. There's a bit of a mystery set up right from the get-go with Dinah talking to Ollie. Ollie can't be involved, really, but she has to put together a team. And the plan is, as Ollie puts it, to put together a team that'll make whoever runs into them in a dark alley shit their pants. That's the goal that's set up at the start. And it teases that, you know, the purpose of this is for Dinah's like adopted sister, but we get more of that as the book goes on. I mean, before we get into like what happens in it, Emma, how did you feel about this?
I liked it a lot. It doesn't feel like a Birds of Prey book. It feels like its own thing, but I understand why they went with that title, and maybe it'll develop into feeling like that Birds of Prey. But it has a voice. I already, you know, has that Kelly Thompson feel to it. So I'm not upset at all of that. Just, I don't know, calling it Birds while only having, you know, Dinah. However, they do make it a big point of Barbara can't know about this.
Yeah,
right?
Like whoever gave Dinah the information she has, which we'll get to at the end of the issue, obviously, said specifically, in no uncertain terms, that Barbara cannot know about any of this. So obviously she would have brought Barbara in, but she's not allowed to.
Right. So I think that's part of the point too. So, but it definitely has the lightness that I associate with Kelly Thompson, like especially from Hawkeye and West Coast Avengers and all that type of stuff.
It's got the... She writes very likable characters, and the way they bounce off of each other without it being overly wordy is a skill. And, you know, the art here is fantastic. I think Romero does a really great sort of flat, muted colors style of you know, when you get to like just like three pages in, where it's like, oh, well, if you can't have Babs, who's the next best choice? And then you cut to, you know, Cassandra Cain, like fighting a bunch of, you know, League of Assassins, whoever it is. And it's just, you know, it feels like a big entrance, and you get that gorgeous 2-page spread where Dinah jumps in and helps her fight. And it's like, you know, it's all the different positions they're in as they're going through all these like fights that they're having, and
fighting League of Shadows, League of Assassins, one of them. Right. And also the body language for Cass too. That's always important. Is when I look at an artist's work when they're working with Cass, is because she's mostly nonverbal, and over time she's gotten more verbal, but the body language has to be there. And I feel like Romero does that very well here, because a lot of the panels with Cass, she's in the full mask, like her Batgirl costume.
In fact, I think she's in that in every panel. She's in
every panel, and so, but you still get the vibe she's going for. She's still very, you know.
Well, the best example of that, after this 2-page spread, that's, you know, all the fights happening, is at the bottom of that page when Dinah says, "Hey, I've got this mission. I need you to sign up. You can't tell Barbara, but this is about my sister. I need to save her." Blah blah blah. And there's 2 panels at the bottom of that page where Cass says okay, and then there's a panel of Dinah saying really just like that, and then Cass responds, of course, what's more important than a sister? And those 2 panels are almost identical, the Cass ones, because it's just her in her mask. But if you look closely, you can see that the shoulders have very different body language in both. One of them, they're more sort of, you know, up and like she's sort of tense. And then when she says the thing about, you know, there's nothing more important than a sister, her shoulders are relaxed. And the body language, just and that subtle detail, just tells you something on its own. So, yeah.
I do love that Cass is getting a revival, because, you know, we had her in Batgirls, right? And then she's one of the main characters in Spirit World. And now she's part of the Birds of Prey team. So, like, you know, just letting these creatives come on and use the character, and they all feel in their interpretations pretty good.
I think anyone reading Batgirl from, you know, the early to mid 2000s probably has a lot of affection for Cassandra Cain, and wants to use, and you know, a lot of people who are writing comics now were probably reading in that era, so it makes a lot of sense. They all want to use her.
But yeah, so Kelly Thompson, and, you know, big fan from the Kate Bishop Hawkeye series and all of that stuff. So bringing, like you're talking about, the incorporation of all these characters, but they all have unique voices. So you know exactly who's talking, even if you're not looking directly where the balloon's going. Which I think that is one of Thompson's specialties.
Yeah, I mean, the very next person then introduces Big Barda, who, again, speaks very different. I guess the best thing I compare her to, she's like the Drax of the group.
Kind of, yeah.
You know, she's very matter-of-fact. She refers to Cass as Little Bat over and over again.
Would you guess that Barda was my favorite part of this book this week?
Oh, I'm shocked, man. That's not like you.
So
That's only because there's not a redhead.
That's true. You throw Knockout in here, or from Apocalypse, where we got a different.
Yeah. Because Barda hits Cass by accident when she first shows up, and then is like, "Oh, sorry, but I'm impressed you survived a hit, Little Bat." So,
and I saw that you were getting ready to dodge, so you're good on top of it.
Yeah.
So it's those little things, how she's talking through her physicality.
I think what's so interesting about how these different action scenes, because they fight like a bunch of these, lackeys that Barda was fighting in her bar. And the first fight with Dinah in the League of Assassins, it's presented as this big 2-page spread where you're seeing all the different positions that they're in as they're going through and fighting all these different bad guys. It's because it's one big 2-page spread, and it's like it's giving you this idea of like smooth, almost acrobatic combat. It's giving you this sense of like flowing through the scene. The Barda scene where she's with Cass, because Barda's the focus, it's a lot more panels, and it's a lot more of like Barda like throwing people out of panels. It's a lot more carnage. It's a lot more like, no, this isn't acrobatic when it's Barda that's fighting. This is someone Hulk smashing and throwing people around like the ragdolls. And does a really good job of getting that across, the difference between the two fighting styles, I thought. So, yeah, that's very good.
Very much.
Yeah. So recruits Barda. Once she knows it's about Sin, the sister, she's in. Whilst Dinah is off to Star City to recruit kind of our sort of least known character of the announced team, which is of course Zealot, from the Wildcats side of the tracks.
Who makes an appearance with Grifter, which that keeps that I associate those characters together since Rosenberg introduced them in Urban Legends, right? So
to be fair, I think they've been connected a lot longer than that, but yeah.
Well, what I mean is in this form, right? In this version of Wildcats, they're kind of partnered up in that way. So the fact that she goes there and she's with Grifter, and that plays off of Dinah and Grifter's past too, because that's a Team 7 thing.
Yeah, well, Zealot says that this is not. She's not convinced to go and help. She owes Dinah a favor, and it's like, okay, you're calling in the favor, all right. So we've got 4 members, and I just want this team meeting page when it's the 4 of them, like, it's so colorful. The way that the colors in the background sort of like go from green to pink to purple to blue, very, very nice. It gives the whole thing a really nice color palette. And it feels more distinct than any other book I read this week. It feels like this is this book's style. And then Cass is like, hey, what about Harley Quinn? And Dinah's like, hell no. And then Cass says, can I tell you a story? And then there's a couple of pages of a flashback. And I liked how the coloring was done for these 2 pages, actually.
Yeah. It's all kind of light pastel, kind of.
But it's basically Cass bumping into Harley when they're investigating the same crime. And Harley fights Cass. And Cass is basically impressed at Harley because she's so unpredictable with how she fights. Like, for example, in this scene, she grabs a big fish and tries to hit her with a fish.
Instead of the frying pan that she looked like she was going for.
She didn't win, but she got closer than most people would. Like, much closer than she would have expected. So she says, hey, and this is actually 4 pages, not 2. And she eventually just jumps out the window with a smile on her face to get away from Cass. And but the comedy beat here that really killed me though is when it cuts back to like the scene of like her telling the story. It's this POV shot of the other ladies, and they're just like, small bat, that was hardly a story. You barely spoke. And then I went back and looked through those 4 pages where she was telling the story, and I get the impression that she basically didn't actually describe a lot of this. She maybe just said that there's like captions where she says, frying pan, no fish. And then
it's like she's like, to me, she was recounting what happened while also a little bit acting it out. So they're just kind of looking at her like, we have no idea.
Yeah,
what's going on.
I love the idea that we got all the context because we could see the art, but they got barely any of it. They just got what, fish instead of frying pan. What?
Yeah.
What's going on? And she's like, no, she almost beat me. We should try and recruit her. So sure enough, they go and get Harley, who's fighting some bad guys in an alleyway. And Harley thinks they're a kill squad, and they're like, we're not a kill squad. We're here to recruit. So.
She has tell your kill squad, right? You got Cassandra Cain, Big Barda, Zealot, and you. It's enough to make people crap their pants.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, because she basically said, "Oh, this reaction Harley's given us is the right one." Yeah. Perfect reaction. No, that was a good setup and payoff. But Harley ultimately, of course, says she's in. Right. You know. Sin's a cool ass little girl who might grow into a cool ass woman. I'm in. Like that doesn't really take much to. So there is kind of a nice like positive like women sticking together vibe that's happening here for some of the characters.
Yeah, and so I had to go back, and I wasn't that familiar with Sin and her development, but upon reading, apparently she was supposed to be the next Lady Shiva.
Okay.
Right, and so Diana got her out of there, and so whatever she's wrapped up in now, it almost seems like whoever was responsible for her, for raising her before Dinah got to her, has got her wrapped back up in this big problem. So the fact that they're all going to come together to kind of pull someone out from from this darkness, where you look at all of these characters, and like you said, Zealot is the one that I'm least familiar with, but you have Harley, her, right, her backstory. You have Cassandra Cain, who is Shiva's daughter, right? And you have Big Barda, who's from Apocalypse, who fled Darkseid to join up with New Genesis, and her husband, Mr. Miracle. So there's a through line. So Zealot, I'm not that familiar with her, but maybe those are along the same lines. That's kind of her. Maybe. But there seems to be a theme with all of them escaping darkness to fight on the side of light most of the time.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. That tracks. And then the last page reveals who told Dinah that Sin needs saving and how to do it. It turns out to be a character named Meridian. However, she does point out that you might know her as Maps or Mia Mizuguchi from this time. And I had to double check who that was, because I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm supposed to know who this is. I'm going to go check. It turns out this is the little sister from Batgirls who originally appeared in Gotham Academy, but this is her grown up from the future.
Gotcha.
So
I remember the name from like online discourse. So that's probably where from was the Gotham Academy.
Yeah, because she says, Maps, you might know me in this time as Maps. So it's like, okay, clearly you're from the future.
Yeah.
You clearly have, whether it's powers or just like gadgetry, but you've got some sort of electric powers going on here, judging by the art. And yeah. But so she says to them, I'm here to help you break into Themyscira and rescue Sin from the Amazons before they accidentally bring about the end of the world. And then Harley laughs, and that's the end of the book.
I was just like, no effing way.
Dear. Honestly, I don't know if we knew that we were going to break into Themyscira, but I am excited by that development.
Well, and it makes sense. So a lot of people were upset. Not upset. I mean, in that way of comic book fans being like, well, wait a minute. Why wouldn't Dinah go talk to Diana, right? She's known her for years. And Kelly Thompson's like, why don't you get beyond one issue? Let's let the story play out a little bit.
Even this statement, though, from Meridian at the end, though, before they accidentally bring about the end of the world, that implies that if Dinah just went and asked something, it might start the chain of events that would end the world. I mean, it's not like anything concrete yet, but it's enough of a little thing to think, okay, there's a reason why Dinah... The same way, because the book starts with saying Babs cannot know. So maybe Diana can also not know.
Right. It's just one of those things, like, just, it's one issue. Let's let the story play out.
Yeah.
And
it was the same with Titans issue 1, where people were like, oh my god, did you really kill off that character? And then Taylor's like, just read issue 2. And of course, within 2 pages of issue 2, no, that was never what was happening. Calm down.
Right. Just this overreaction on stuff for serialized storytelling I will never understand. You're telling me we're going to get a Kelly Thompson story with Leonardo Romero art of a heist on Themyscira, essentially, right? Like,
essentially, yeah.
let's go. Like, that is a book for me.
This issue, issue 1 of this is a sales pitch. It's like, here's your characters, here's how they're going to banter off each other, here's the premise. This is, we're not really getting to it in this issue yet, but here's what it is. We're going to break into Themyscira and steal someone. That's an amazing premise.
Yeah. We're going to free them, not steal them.
Well, still, but in the eyes of Themyscira, it's stealing them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like, maybe this kicks off some of the Amazon's attack stuff that we know is coming. Like, maybe. But yeah, no, it's. And again, I've talked about Harley so many times. It's just, she's become a character that I've come to enjoy. And so getting the Kelly Thompson voice for Harley and just, that whole scene with Cass as she's going, and she picks up the fish. All I could think of was Charlie Day yelling "wild card."
Yeah, wild card. Yeah.
That's it. That was an artistic representation of that, and what she brings to this squad. Right, is she can fight Cass to a standstill because she's making it up as she goes. And so just to get across the characters in the way this creative team did, I'm very excited for more of this.
Yeah, Barda's Danny DeVito for the record. Anyway.
She's Frank.
So anyway, I started blasting. Maybe that's more Zealot than I'm thinking about it, actually, but still, whatever. It's just funny in my head because she's the tallest one, and Danny DeVito is, of course, the opposite of that. Yeah. No, I love this first issue. I think I like the voices for the characters and the banter. I thought it flowed really well. Thompson is very good at having banter without it being overly wordy, so that feels great. And the art, honestly, I wasn't really familiar with Romero's art before, but I really like how this looks. It feels like it fits the tone of the book perfectly. It's got a clear color scheme. The way it switches to the even more muted pastels for the flashbacks really good. And like I said, the way it dealt with the different fighting styles by doing different art sort of sequence styles. Like, one was a 2-page spread, one was a sequence of panels that were more chaotic. All that stuff felt very intentional, and like artistic choices were being made. So I think we're in very good hands here, and this is just an exciting addition to my DC pull list, if you will. All right, what were you rating Birds of Prey issue 1, Matt?
I'm giving this a solid 9. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I agree with the 9. Yeah.